Hey everybody, this is Tracy here with another edition of A View from Tracy's Point, and we are here with our recap of today's hearing in the Northern District of Illinois. And surprisingly, on the second day of trial, they called their star witness, Miss Reshona Landfair. And boy, did she have a lot to say. So we're going to get into that, but before we do, I am going to read a document that June Brown's attorney filed on yesterday, I believe it was, and then we'll discuss some other things. And if you didn't catch the end of the video that I did last night, I was talking about YouTuber Just Jazz Only. She's collecting money to pay for transcripts because, as you guys know, these media people who are actually in the courtroom and live tweeting about the case, they're really only covering the prosecution side. When the defense team gets up, they'll just use like a sentence or two, or they'll say, okay, so-and-so is up. So a good example was they spent the whole day covering Reshona's testimony, and then when the prosecution, rested and it was time for the cross-examination, the first lawyer that was up was Daryl McDavid's lawyer, and all they said was, well, he's getting ready to cross-examine her, but didn't go into any of the cross-examination, what questions were asked or anything like that. So that's why it's important that we get the transcripts. And so basically what Just Jazz is doing is anybody who donates towards the purchase of the transcripts, she will send them a copy of the transcripts, and you can do whatever you want to. And so I had a few people that donated money today. The first donation is going to went towards yesterday's transcript, so I'll be reading those. I'll probably get that up for you guys tomorrow. And then someone else made another donation, and so I'm going to send that over to Just Jazz so that we can get the transcripts from today. And then we definitely want to be able to get the transcripts for tomorrow, because Miss Reshona Landfair will be cross-examined by Miss Jennifer Bonjean. So we want to get all of that conversation. So if you are able, and the reason I'm asking for help with these donations is because, as I explained in my video yesterday and in previous videos, YouTube is demonetizing all of my videos. And I don't know if I mentioned this. I know I was telling somebody else about it, but we actually have what's called self-certification, and it's where YouTube trusts the YouTuber that the content that they are providing is within guidelines for ad revenue. And I actually lost my self-certification once I started covering this Northern District of Illinois case. So basically every video that I put up at this point, until I can get my self-certification back, is going to be demonetized by YouTube. And then I have to put in for an appeal. An appeal can take up to 7 days. And by then, you guys would have already watched the video, so there's really no revenue to earn on those videos. And so I'm basically, taking my time, doing these videos, time that I could be spending, doing some other things, soliciting business from my paying clients and that type of stuff. And so Just isn't asking for, a set amount. She is just saying, if you can contribute, please contribute. We'll get the transcripts over to you. I'll give transcripts to other creators because we need as many people as possible reading these transcripts online. And so that's basically if you send the money to my PayPal, and I have the PayPal below in the description, any money that is sent to that PayPal, I am going to send it over to Jess to help her pay for these transcripts. And these transcripts cost hundreds of dollars per day. And so when I was doing the Eastern District of New York case, I was paying for the majority of those transcripts. Like in the beginning, when I was first started reading those transcripts to you guys, I was paying for those transcripts out of my pocket, okay? I was spending $280, $300, $320 a day for those transcripts. And I know people will be like, oh, well, you were making money, off of doing the videos because your channel is monetized. Yes, but the money that I was making off of those videos was going to the course. And it's just pointed out, it makes no sense for, 10 YouTubers to be paying $200-$300 a day for the same transcripts. Why not pool the resources together by one set of transcripts and then disseminate the transcripts to the different creators? And so I never ask people to make donations, to send super chats or anything like that on my channel. I take whatever money I make, off of my ad revenue, and I'm satisfied because this is a hobby for me. This isn't a job. I have another job that pays the bills. But I can't afford to take money out of my pockets to pay for these transcripts, for everybody else, to enjoy, plus use my time to read the transcripts. So I hope you guys understand where I was coming from when I was talking about the donations, or if you even made it to the end of the last video and heard me talk about it. So that's it for now. Watch this little commercial, and then I will be back to read the motion in limine from Milton Brown's attorney, and then we'll get into our recap for today's testimony. Okay, so this motion in limine from Milton Brown's attorney, it was a little confusing for me, and I guess it's because she was confused. So it says defendant Milton Brown's motion to clarify the court's ruling on his motions in limine. So defendant Milton Brown, by the Federal Defender Program, and its attorney Mary H. Judge, respectfully submits this motion to clarify the court's ruling in the motion in limine. So factual background and summary of issue. 1. Filings. On June 14, 2022, Mr. Brown filed his consolidated motions in limine. At the government's request, those consolidated motions were later filed under seal on July 6, 2022. The next day, the government filed its response to inter alia Mr. Brown's consolidated motions in limine. 1 day later, Mr. Brown filed his reply to the government's response, together with his response to the government's consolidated motions in limine. In those filings, Mr. Brown and the government outlined their arguments regarding his alleged role in making hotel and travel arrangements for individuals 4 and 6. So 4 we know is Tracy Sampson. And then I told you guys, Jennifer Bongine just put the names out there. And I said the names in a previous video. I guess I should have wrote them down, wrote down who these people were. But they named everybody in that one motion. And so on Kelly's behalf, so those arguments centered on the prohibition against propensity evidence as provided in Federal Rule of Evidence, and then they give the number and the dockets and everything. So 2, ruling. At the August 3rd, 2022 pretrial conference, the court ruled on the available motions in limine, including Mr. Brown's motion in limine number 2A. As provided in the transcript of that hearing, the court ruled as follows. The ruling. The motion is denied in part. Brown's travel arrangements are direct evidence that Kelly enticed individuals into certain activity. However, the government argues that Brown's travel arrangements for individuals 4 and 6 make it more likely that he knew different individuals were depicted in videos 2, 3, and 4. The allegations seem to rely directly on impermissible propensity evidence as per Rule 404B. Notably, that language tracks very closely into the language from the court's written orders entered later that day. In the court's written orders, the court ruled on Mr. Brown's motion in limine, number 2, as follows. Ruling: the motion is denied in part. The government may discuss Brown's travel arrangements as direct evidence that Kelly enticed individuals into activity. However, the government may not argue that because Brown made travel arrangements for specific individuals, it was more likely that he knew different individuals were depicted in certain videos. Importantly, these two excerpts are taken directly from the court's orders, one spoken and one written. And you guys remember the judge, like they had been filing all these motions, and I was like, okay, but when is he going to reply to the motions? Well, he replied to the motions, I think it was the day that jury selection began. He just ran down the list of what his responses were. He still has not submitted a written version, further explaining his decisions. And we know with Ann Donnelly, she didn't file hers until at the end of the trial after the man had been found guilty. So this attorney says she's confused. So 3, question arising from ruling. The court's ruling on Mr. Brown's motion in limine, number 2, posed one particularly pressing puzzle for undersigned counsel. That puzzle is, in short, how to reconcile the two parts of the court's ruling. One, that the government may use the evidence against Kelly, i.e. as direct evidence that Kelly enticed individuals, that the government, and then 2, that the government cannot use the evidence against Mr. Brown, may not argue that because Brown made travel arrangements, it was more likely that he knew different individuals were depicted in the videos. Specifically, counsel wondered whether the government's witnesses could refer to Mr. Brown by name when testifying as to those events. On the other hand, the government can introduce the evidence against Kelly. On the other, the court ruled that, as against Mr. Brown, the evidence constitutes improper propensity evidence, which is inadmissible under Rule 404B. This potential conflict is explained in more detail in Section 5 of this motion. So 4, pretrial conference transcripts. At the next pretrial conference on August 11, 2022, counsel for Mr. Brown inquired as to the contents of the court's order regarding his motion in limine. Specifically, counsel asked for some clarification on the court's ruling on Brown's motion in limine. The government then misstated the court's order from the previous pretrial conference when it said, when the court did say at the final pretrial conference, though, is that Brown could be named, and that was from the 8/11/22 pretrial conference. Obviously, as outlined in Section 3 above, that is incorrect. The court never said that or anything close to it. Continuing, despite the misstatement, counsel for Mr. Brown presented the court with the source of their confusion. Our question is because Rule 404 bars evidence and not just argument, and so we were hoping that the court would rule that the witnesses could refer to Brown as an unnamed employee of Kelly's. The court responded, 404B material, I guess. I hadn't thought of that, but that's so that may not argue that. They may not argue that. And when they say the court, excuse me, when they say the court, they're referring to the judge. So this is what the judge said. 404B material, I guess, hadn't thought of that, but that's so they may not argue that. That would be 404B. And then 8/11/22 at, I guess, line 25. Expanding on that after the hearing from the government, the court further explained, as I understand the whatever Brown actually did, the government can introduce into evidence. They can't argue that because he did the one, that therefore is more likely than not that he did the other, which is what 4OB is supposed to prevent. Child, I don't know what the hell they talking about here. Okay, unfortunately, the conference moved on and soon concluded before counsel for Mr. Brown could raise a follow-up question. If given the opportunity, counsel would have inquired as to 2 points. 1, what does the court mean when it says the government can introduce evidence of whatever Brown actually did? And 2, what does the court mean when it says that the government cannot argue for the propensity inference? Child, this is why he need to put stuff in writing, because he just messing everything up and he got everybody confused. So after all, Mr. Brown is not contesting that the government can introduce the allegations that Mr. Brown made arrangements for individuals 4 and 6 as direct evidence against Kelly. Instead, what Mr. Brown is contesting and what the court ruled in his favor on is whether the government can use that evidence against Mr. Brown. Counsel for Mr. Brown requested clarification then and now because the only apparent way to achieve both results, i.e., introducing the evidence as against Kelly without introducing it against Mr. Brown, is, as discussed below in Section 5, to preclude the witnesses from using Mr. Brown's name when testifying as to those alleged facts. The matter of whether the witnesses can name Mr. Brown in that context, however, has yet to be resolved. It was not resolved at the August 3rd pretrial conference, and it was not resolved at the August 11th pretrial conference. For that reason, Mr. Brown submits this motion for clarification. Okay, discussion. Above all else, it is important to note one crucial principle. Rule 404B governs the admission of evidence itself, not merely argument as to that evidence. Put differently, if the evidence is improper propensity evidence and the court found here with respect to Mr. Brown it is inadmissible, in such a case the evidence itself does not come in. The proponent of the evidence is left worse off than they would be if only precluded from arguing the propensity inference. Consider, for example, the Seventh Circuit's decision in Gomez. The leading case on this issue, United States versus Gomez, Seventh Circuit from 2014. In that case, the Seventh Circuit provided prescient guidance when it held, 1, that the evidence was relevant only through a propensity inference, and 2, as a result, the district court should not have admitted the evidence. There, the Seventh Circuit did not stop at ruling that the government should have been precluded from arguing that the evidence is indicative of Gomez's propensity towards the conduct at issue. Rather, the Seventh Circuit held that the propensity evidence, the user quantity of cocaine found in Gomez's bedroom, was itself inadmissible. Applying that principle to the court's 2-part ruling as to Mr. Brown's motion in limine creates some tension. Namely, the evidence is admissible as against Kelly, but it is improper propensity evidence and thereby inadmissible as against Mr. Brown. Since Kelly and Mr. Brown are on trial together, this presents an issue of conflicting admissibility. When these issues arise in cases of multiple co-defendants, Federal Rules of Evidence 105 governs. The text of Rule 105 is provided here in full. If the court admits evidence that is admissible against a party or for a purpose, but not against another party for another purpose, the court, on timely request, must restrict the evidence to its proper scope and instruct the jury accordingly. Federal Rules of Evidence 105, expanding on that text, the advisory committee notes to Rule 105, caution that the that the availability and effectiveness of limiting instructions must be taken into consideration in reaching a decision whether to exclude for unfair prejudice. Federal Rules of Evidence 105, Advisory Committee's role. Oh, child. Listen. Okay, let me keep going. Say what I'm about to say. So notably, Mr. Brown anticipated this issue in his reply. In that motion, Mr. Brown offered two solutions to the problem. One, severance, which was denied. And first of all, Mr. Brown's charges, he got one charge. Ain't nobody severing and having a whole second trial for him. Two, preclude the witnesses from using Mr. Brown's name in this context. As outlined in the reply, Mr. Brown's second solution consisted of a request that if this testimony is allowed, the witnesses refer to him by either a pseudonym or as an unnamed, unidentified employee of Kelly's. Continuing, Mr. Brown explained that this would not burden the government's ability to use the evidence against Kelly. The government could still attribute the conduct to an employee in order to establish Kelly's efforts towards his alleged enticement. Not that Brown trying to help them build a case against Mr. Kelly. So the Rule 404B issue would not be cured by a ruling that allows the witnesses to refer to Mr. Brown by name when testifying. Oh gosh, she just keeps saying the same thing over and over. So let's go down to the conclusion. So the conclusion, for the above reasons, Mr. Brown asked that the court clarify its ruling as to Mr. Brown's motion in limine. Specifically, Mr. Brown requests that the court resolve the question of whether the government's witnesses may use his name when testifying about the alleged arrangements at issue in that motion. And I think the arrangements that they're talking about is quite possibly the trip to Mexico or wherever it was that he sent the what's the people name, the Landfairs. I think that's what she's talking about, or she may be talking about the hotel room reservations. But anyway, his whole strategy is that he was just doing his job. He was just doing what he was told. He wasn't part of a conspiracy. He wasn't a part of, any women that came through that house. He was just hired to be a runner or whatever. And whatever Mr. Kelly asked him to do, that's what he did. He didn't ask any questions. He wasn't in Mr. Kelly's business to find out the who, what, when, where, and how. And so she basically doesn't want, when they're talking about allegations that involve that he played a part in doing his job, that they not name him, that they, say an employee made the arrangements or an employee did this or an employee did that. So anyway, child, I don't know if the judge ruled on that nonsense or not, but just wanted to share that with you all. So now let's get into these shenanigans from today. Excuse me. So, as I did yesterday with the recap during the jury selection, there are multiple people that are covering this, half covering this trial. Multiple reporters for the Sun-Times, Courthouse News, the Chicago Tribune. They're basically just talking about what the prosecution did and not what the defense did. But, we do get some information about what happened, and particularly today, since Reshona was on the stand the majority of the day. And so if it starts to sound redundant, it is because I am reading the different reporters' Twitters. And so, it's basically the same information, but, sometimes they word things differently, and then you get a better understanding of what actually took place in the courtroom. So we're going to start out with an article, and I believe this article was written by Jason Mesner for the Chicago Tribune. So it says, for the first time after 2 decades of swirling allegations, Kelly's former goddaughter has taken the stand as a prosecution witness in a case against the singer. Dressed in a white blazer with her hair in long braids, the woman, now 37, and testifying at Kelly's federal trial in Chicago under the pseudonym Jane, although her real name is Reshona. And I posted on Twitter, I was like, this how you know these people full of crap. Because remember, Ariel went by Jane. Now we got Reshona going by Jane. Like, are they in competition for Mr. Kelly's attention? Like, what is the point? And especially when everybody already know who y'all are. Like, what is the point of these pseudonyms? I don't get it. So anyway, Reshona told the jury that she had did the do with Mr. Kelly. First she said, now, according to these people, she said that the first time was 14, but then we definitely know during the trial she said the first time was 15. So their acts escalated to intercourse when she was 15. Oh, okay, so she had contact at 14, but they did the do at 15. So she asked by the prosecutor how she knew her exact age. Reshona calmly responded, because that's when I lost my virginity. Ooh, okay. That's when she lost her virginity, y'all, when she was 15. Okay, so after that, they had sex innumerable times, sometimes along with other teenage girls whom Reshona recruited at Kelly's request, she said. And that little story there is taken from the Jesseline Maxwell, or Heseline, or whatever her name is, Maxwell case, because that was what was insinuated over there. So the encounters took place in Kelly's home on West George Street, at his near West Side recording studio, on tour buses, and in hotels in Chicago and elsewhere, she said. Two of the other individuals are also expected to testify against Kelly later in the trial. To illustrate how young she looked at the time of the encounters, prosecutors had Reshona identify two photos of herself. The first, taken when she was a sophomore in high school, showed her on one knee holding a basketball, smiling. The other was a headshot from when she was in a music group, around the time she said she first met him. So Reshona is expected to testify later Thursday that she was in fact the girl depicted on the infamous video footage being abused by Kelly. Reshona and her parents had denied for years that Kelly ever had an inappropriate relationship with her. Reshona was not called to testify at Kelly's 2008 Cook County trial, even though county prosecutors alleged, what did they allege, y'all? Let me get back up here. Alleged she was the person on the tape. Federal prosecutors alleged Kelly and his associates paid off Reshona and her family and covered up other videotapes in order to rig his Cook County trial. He was acquitted on those charges in 2008. Testifying in a quiet voice, Jane says she was starstruck when she first met Kelly in the 1990s. Really, girl? Especially after he attended a performance of her music group and gave her good feedback. It made me feel happy that such a successful person was saying I was gifted, so I was excited, she said. She began to visit Kelly's studio regularly when she was 12 or 13, along with her aunt Stephanie. Sparkle Edwards, a protege of Kelly's. Edwards advised her she should ask Kelly to be her godfather, she testified. And then Reshona is quoted as saying, she said, referring to Sparkle, and this is where I just was like, okay, throw the whole family away. So she said, I should sit on his lap and rub his head and ask him to play that role in my life. Reshona testified she did, and Kelly chuckled a bit and said yes. Okay, so I'm about to drop a little clip in here of a little conversation with Sparkle and some other people, where Sparkle was just like, no, they didn't just throw me under the bus like this. Oh, child, messy. So I think Sparkle ain't testifying in this trial. And hopefully Jennifer Bonjean got this information, child. So anyway, because she might have to subpoena Sparkle so Sparkle could come in there and say, that girl telling a lie. Okay, so after that, as a matter of fact, let me bring up, and then I can read. Let me see if I can open this up real quick for you guys and read the exchange between Sparkle and whoever it was that she was texting with. Just give me a second. I should have left that open. I don't know why I closed it out. Oh, come on. Let's see. So you guys, have you been following along on Twitter to what is happening in the case? Like, if so, let me know what you think is going on. Like, did you think that Reshona was believable? Did you think she was lying? Were you picking up different similarities between, like the Northern District of New York case, the Ghislaine Maxwell case, or any other, like the Maxim case? Was that a case called Maxim? Whatever it was called, Nexum. That case, because it seems like a lot of themes, there are a lot of continuing themes in these. Okay, so let me read this to you guys. So it starts out with someone named at Duran Princess 80 says, I was wondering the same thing. And then Sparkle replied and said, absolutely not. I can't help the lies told on me, and under oath at that. And cause your mama mad at me cause y'all were forced to testify? And then somebody named 100.p replied to Sparkle, said, let them know. And then somebody named Hi Mrs. Parker replied to Sparkle, Sparks been spoke out and they shunned her. She been minding her business and staying away from the perv since. And then Sparkle replied to 100p, thanks, hun. So I guess Sparkle said, y'all lying on me and I ain't got time for it, okay? But we'll see. But anyway, that was just a little interesting exchange that took place. So child, where was I at? Let's see. So then she said, after Sparkle gave her those instructions that Sparkle now saying is a lie, because I'm thinking like, okay, not that Sparkle was grooming her niece, because that's what it would look like to me. And Sparkle, if you ain't got immunity, you probably need to hurry up and say that this was a lie from the pits of hell, okay, for they be coming for you. So then it says, after that, their relationship took a sexual turn, Reshona said. She would have long phone conversations with him that eventually turned explicit, and she was 13. Kelly also gave her alcohol for the first time when she was 14, and she began drinking heavily. Child, your mama and them didn't know you was drinking heavily? Like they didn't realize they had a little alcoholic on their hands? So then she said, it would help me loosen up, kind of take me away from the moment, she testified. Reshona has so far remained calm on the witness stand, keeping her gaze on the prosecutor, asking her questions, pausing at times to sweep her braids off her shoulder or wipe at her eyelashes. Kelly has shown little outward reaction to her testimony. When it came time for the witness to identify Kelly in the courtroom, U.S. District Judge Harry Linenweber instructed everyone in the room to remove their mask. Then Reshona said that she saw the singer sitting at the defense table in a blue suit jacket. After Assistant U.S. Attorney Janice Appenting asked Reshona to identify another article of clothing Kelly was wearing, Kelly's attorney Jennifer Bonjean said loudly into her microphone, so stipulated, it's Mr. Kelly. Like, girl, stop playing. So prosecutors earlier called to the witness stand a man who in 2001 purchased a big house in Lakeview a converted church with a swimming pool and basketball court and a barbershop. The previous owner was, he came to find out, R. Kelly. So Kelly allegedly filmed, what did he film? Okay, at least one of the videos at issue in his federal indictment at that home. And in 2002, police evidence technicians came through to take photos, including pictures of the wood-paneled room depicted in the video. After Matthew Hulsizer moved in, he found out that a smoke detector in at least one of the bedrooms was not in fact a smoke detector at all. It concealed a small hidden camera. And in order to leave the bedroom, you had to press a button, he said, a feature he removed since he thought it was a safety hazard. Okay, wait a minute. He concealed the small, okay. Now, the whole thing about the cameras is somebody, among people that were discussing this, I can't remember whose Twitter it was saying like that's uncommon. And actually, I'm saying this. Well, she was saying it was, it wasn't uncommon because these are celebrities and they want to record everything that's going on in their house, right? Now, I'm saying this. My daughter rented an Airbnb, right? So when I walked into the Airbnb, I saw this camera. And you guys know Airbnbs are not supposed to have cameras inside. So the lady had told my daughter, the camera controlled something else. So later on in the stay, my daughter had an issue with the air condition. And so she called the lady, and I was telling my daughter that basically the drain line was clogged, and that, she needed to disconnect the line. You pour some bleach in it, run the water hose through it, and it'll get the debris and stuff that's built up, like the sediment that's built up in the line. I said, but you know what? This isn't your house, so you probably need to call her and have her send somebody over, to unclog the line. But that's what the issue is. So she calls the lady, and so then the lady proceeds to tell my daughter what's been going on in the house, right? And that we were walking on the grass and we did this, and then something in the house was, and I was just like, really? Like, lady, you're not supposed to be doing that. So anyway, the whole thing about so people it's not uncommon for people to have cameras in what looks like a smoke detector. Might not even been a smoke detector, just been the cover of the camera. Anyway, that's all. So moving on. It says that a basketball court in the George Street home was an homage to Kelly's success with a large cartoon mural painted on one wall depicting the Looney Tunes characters from the movie Space Jam, which of course had featured Kelly's Grammy-winning song. Guys know that was played yesterday in court. So the cartoon included a likeness of Kelly on the court in red uniform and sunglasses, according to photos presented by the government, playing with the Tasmanian Devil. The cartoon scoreboard showed he was winning by 2 points with 1 second left on the clock. Some in the crowd of cartoon characters, which included Tweety Bird and Marvin the Martian, were holding up signs. And then there's a quote that says the Colorado room, like the state, Colorado, room looked like the interior of a log cabin with faux wood walls and an accent wall that prepared. Wait a minute, let me start over here. I'm tired. The Colorado room looked like the interior of a log cabin with faux wood walls and an accent wall that appeared to be fake stone. A large hot tub dominated the room, also ensconced in fake wood paneling. The photos of the master bedroom presented by prosecutors included close-ups of the escape button and the smoke detector on the ceiling, where the new owner said he found a small hidden video camera. So Kelly sat dressed in a dark, and plus this is Mr. Kelly's home. He can put cameras wherever he wants to. So Kelly sat dressed in a blue dark suit. Before court began, a marshal came out to the table to ask for a tie for him, telling his lawyers he wants the brown one today. Testimony had resumed Thursday with cross-examination of a retired Chicago police detective who investigated the initial allegations that Kelly was abusing his goddaughter. So on the stand again Thursday, Daniel Everett reiterated that when he spoke to Jane, or Reshona, and her parents in 2000, they denied that the girl had any kind of an inappropriate relationship with Kelly. A little more than a year later, he got a tape from the then Chicago Sun-Times journalist Jim DeRogatis and recognized Jane on the footage. The video became the center of Kelly's Cook County court case 20 years ago. So defense attorneys hit hard on chain of custody issues surrounding the tape. Everett noted that he has recently seen a copy of the footage and the content is the same, but he does not know where the original VHS tape is. On cross-examination, and I think that that's an important thing. Just because you're saying it, you believe it's the same content, but you don't know where the original is. So then why do we have a fake, and where did the fake come from? Okay, or where did the copy come from? And I'm sure Jennifer Bonjean has a theory, and she will drill that in at some point. So on cross-examination from Bonjean, Everett noted that he also interviewed a friend of Reshona's in 2002. That person is expected to testify later at trial under the pseudonym Pinky. There is no indication in Everett's report that underage Pinky told him she had contact with Kelly, Everett testified, and while there were concerns that a videotape depicted images of Pinky being abused, when Everett showed her and her mother stills from the tape, they denied it and any involvement, he testified. So prosecutors' very first witness was a psychologist whose testimony was intended to provide, and guys, these were the people from yesterday, so they were recapping that. The very first witness was a psychologist whose testimony was intended to provide context or explanation for some of the witnesses' behavior, including that victims often keep their abuse secret for years. The tape allegedly filmed in that Lakeview house is one of 4 at the center of the charges against Kelly, who is also accused of, along with former associates Darrell McDavid and Milton June Brown, of conspiring to rig his 2008 trial. And then the article goes on to say, in opening statements, prosecutors painted Kelly as a serial predator who had contact with these individuals hundreds of times over the years. 5 women, including Pinky and Reshona, are expected to testify over the course of the trial that Kelly abused them when they were teens. Bonjean, meanwhile, said prosecutors' case really does hinge on the testimony of liars, extortionists, and people who engaged in the business of trafficking porn. Okay, so opening statements began Wednesday after 2 full days of jury selection. The 12 jurors and 6 alternates were sworn in late Tuesday. On Wednesday morning, 1 juror was replaced with an alternate after developing a medical issue. They are expected to hear evidence and arguments over roughly the next 4 days. And so, guys, I have the transcripts from yesterday, so I will be doing a video on those transcripts. So now let's get into the tweets that came out. So let's start with Megan Crepeau. And you guys know, if you watched the previous video, that I am reading from multiple people. So you're going to hear the different versions of how they were presenting the information. So Megan says, "Good morning, Chicago. Court is expected to resume shortly in the Kelly trial with more testimony from the detective who investigated the early claims about Kelly and his goddaughter. Stephanie told," and now remember, these are just tweets, okay? This isn't like a story, an article that was written, so you got to keep up. So Stephanie, who we know is Sparkle, allegedly told Reshona, I should ask him to be my godfather. And this is Reshona talking. I should ask him to be my godfather. I should sit on his lap and rub his head and ask him to play that role in my life, Reshona testified. She did, and Kelly, quote unquote, chuckled a bit and said yes. So after that, the nature of their relationship changed, Reshona said. We would spend a lot of time on the phone together, and eventually he might ask me a question like, what color panties are you wearing? And she indicated that she was 13 at the time. Okay. So Reshona testified that she was around 14 when Kelly began to physically touch her in a special way, not in a sexual way. The first time was late at night in the office area of Kelly's studio. Since he was her godfather, it was normal for her to be around him without supervision. Girl, first of all, godparents are people that your parents choose your godparents before you even enter this world. Okay, and your godparents are there to take care of you and protect you and help you in the event your parents are unable to do so. So why is your auntie Sparkle up here telling you to be asking some man to be your goddaddy when you 13 years old? Like, what is wrong with y'all? Just weird. Child. And then your dumb parents leaving you with a grown man, that's crazy too. So anyway, the physical contact escalated to sex acts when Reshona was 14 and Kelly engaged her in intercourse for the first time when she was 15, she testified. They had sex an innumerable amount of times when she was 15 to 18 years old, she says. Okay, so Kelly gave her alcohol for the first time when she was 14, and she would drink heavily, she said. It would help me loosen up, kind of take me away from the moment. Kelly would suggest that Reshona recruit her friends to join them, and she complied. Oh, excuse me. I need a drink. Okay, and she complied. Okay, I'm tired, y'all. Where was I at before that snort came? So he gave her alcohol. She drank. It would help me loosen up, kind of take away from the moment. Okay, so I was going to talk about if my mama, okay. First of all, where were the parents when all this drinking and touching and hanging out at the studio? Where were the parents when all this was going out? Well, one person on Twitter pointed out, of course, the father was the drummer. So he was at the studio also, okay, because he was there rehearsing, right? And then I guess the mom was a receptionist at one point. And who else wanted to be a receptionist, administrative assistant? Alice Clary. Remember, Alice Clary wanted to go work for R. Kelly. So I guess she was following the mold. Maybe her and Valerie hadn't had conversations, okay? And Valerie said, girl, go on in there and try and get a job as one of the secretaries so you can watch over your child and figure out, get some evidence or whatever, child, or push this whole situation along. So as the person on Twitter indicated, of course she would have been at the studio a lot because her parents were at the studio. And at that age, she was with her parents, right? Now, why the parents didn't know about all this drinking going on and all this other stuff, I don't know. Like, where did they think she had moseyed on off to while they were doing whatever they were doing? And it seems like if the dad was rehearsing, then that meant that Kelly was with the dad, right? So how was he off doing all this other stuff? But anyway, child, that's what would be running through my mind as a juror. So she said that she went and got some of her friends. And, her friends was like, yeah, girl, we'll come on over there. And so once again, I'm thinking, first of all, I didn't have no friends. Like, I had friends and we used to get in trouble. Like, we used to skip school and stuff like that. Okay, but we wasn't having threesomes and foursomes, okay? We wasn't sleeping with each other's boyfriends. As a matter of fact, at that age, we wasn't sleeping with nobody, okay? Nobody but ourselves in our beds at night at our house, right? So I'm thinking, if your friends were that easy to persuade to come and be a part of your foolishness, then you and your friends were already out there hoeing around and being promiscuous and all this other stuff. And so it didn't take much persuading, because I'm just thinking that young girls that are inexperienced wouldn't have been so accommodating. I don't care who the person was. And the mere fact that it was a celebrity, okay, I think would have made me even more hesitant and been like, no, I'm not doing that. Okay, so Reshona and your friends, birds of a feather flock together. Okay, so then it says he would make an advance, like, what's up with this person? How would you feel if they were included in our activity? I told him yes, I would basically pitch the idea. And so this is from the Ghislaine Maxwell case, guys, where, she would get one person and then tell that person, yeah, go get some of your friends and tell them to come on over here to this island, okay, and hang out with us. And they'll get to meet all these famous people and stuff. So she says, Reshona's testimony is expected to resume. They went on a break after the lunch break. And then Megan says that it's her turn to go into the courtroom where phones and laptops are not allowed. And so she told us to go over to Jason Mesner's page, because now he was going to be in the overflow room, and he would pick up on the live tweeting, because I guess he could use his phone in the overflow. So Jason says, we're back from lunch break. R. Kelly trial, ready to resume with more testimony from Reshona, who is expected to identify herself on the now infamous video with Kelly, which she denied was her back in 2002. And then he has an update to illustrate how young Reshona looked at the time. And then this is where they're talking about, and remember, Jason is the one that wrote that article that I read. So some of this stuff is already in there. Know that they showed two pictures, one with her holding the basketball when she was a sophomore, and then the other was a headshot from when she was like in the 8th grade or something. So that's why she had sex with Kelly. Reshona said it was out of intimidation. He was an authoritative figure. I didn't know how to respond. I didn't know how to say no. I just went along with things, and it somewhat became normal. Girl, yeah, you could have said no, and you could have went and told your mom and daddy what was going on. Like, are y'all stupid? Okay, so listen, let me give a disclaimer here. So I've never been assaulted. I've never been abused. I can't think of a situation where I was ever in, okay, where any of this stuff could have happened to me. Okay, so please, if you feel I'm being callous and unkind, it's because I'm just going back to my 13, 14, 15-year-old mind. Okay, how my mind was operating back then. And if a grown man came to me and was talking to me about this kind of stuff, I would probably be intimidated, and I would probably be scared, and I would probably will have gone to my daddy and be like, Daddy, this man said such and such to me. Mama, this person said such and such to me. I definitely would have been like, okay, well, I'm scared, so I'm going to go ahead and go along with you and do this with you because I'm scared and I'm intimidated, and I don't think I have the right to say no. So that's just basically my thought process. But my thought process is coming from a place of somebody who's never been in that situation, right? Okay. And then actually, let's back it up, because I think I've shared this story on my channel before, and I can't remember if I was talking about this case or talking about something else. But basically, I think it was the summer before I went into the 9th grade, and I was with a friend of mine, and we had gone to a concert, and I had told my parents that her older sister was going to was taking us to the concert, and that I was going to spend the night at their house. And I actually ran into this person recently, and we had like a long conversation. And neither one of us could remember who was performing that night at that concert. And so I was telling her, what my memory was. And she was like, oh my God. And then I was telling her, I said, one thing I remember is that after that night, I don't remember ever seeing you again. I said, I don't remember us falling out of friends or me saying, well, I don't want to hang with her anymore. And then she told me that the reason we didn't see each other again was because she had moved out of state. She had to relocate and go live with a relative somewhere else. But anyway, so we were at this concert, just me and her, right? And I can't remember if the sister was there or not, but I'm thinking the sister wasn't there, that we just went to this concert. But anyway, so we're at the concert. Somehow she gets backstage and talking to some musicians. And so the musicians had told her to come up to their hotel room at the Hilton, which is where all the celebrities stayed when they performed at this particular venue. And so we ended up in this room, and so it was some guys, and I don't think well, I know it was the musicians. It wasn't like the main acts, because I'm talking about like Commodores, Cameo, New Birth, that era, right? So anyway, they were smoking weed and they were drinking and stuff, and I'm just sitting there. And when I'm looking at the picture that I had found that we were talking about, she was dressed, she looked much older than I did in that picture. And I had on like blue jeans and this plaid shirt, might have had on some tennis shoes for all I know, but she was dressed up with high heels on. So it was definitely a difference between our mindsets. So anyway, I'm sitting there and I'm all nervous and confused and like, oh my God, I want to be here. Like, what if my parents found out that I'm here? And so I told her, I said, well, I want to go. You need to call your sister. And then she was like, girl, stop acting like a baby, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, no, I'm ready to go. I'm going to call my dad. And so my mom had always taught us, whoever you leave with, whoever you go with, that's who you leave with. And I was just sitting there like, oh, I can't leave her. My mom was like, you never leave your friends. I'm just sitting there, I'm all nervous. And so the guys was like, they weren't really paying me any attention. They were just talking and drinking. And I guess asking her, like, what's wrong with your friend? Like, do you want to join? And I'm like, no, I want to leave. And so I got up and I left, and nobody tried to stop me or anything. And I remember walking down the hallway like, oh my God, I will call my dad. What am I going to tell my dad? I'm making up, like, oh, her sister, didn't come get us or whatever. We got, separated from her sister or whatever. And then by the time I got to the elevator, she came out of the room and she was like, oh my God, what's wrong with you? And I was like, I'm going home, So we called my dad, and then my dad, took us to her house. And then I told my dad, I said, I don't want to spend the night anymore. I just want to go home. And then, like I said, I never saw her again until, years later when we were adults and everything. And then we recently ran into each other a few months ago. So even at that age, I had the wherewithal to know that this is wrong. And even when I got into a situation I knew I had no business being in, I still had the wherewithal to call, my dad and say, hey, come and get me. So I don't know what the heck Reshona is talking about, or what, Reshona is going through, or why she thought that she had no other options or outcome. So then she goes on to say, and then who uses, he was an authoritative figure. So like they just wrote this script for her, like they wrote this script for Ariel, crazy behind. So Reshona says she started to have feelings for Kelly. So she went along with his request to include her friends. I was thinking I was in love at the time, and I was being submissive. I wanted to give him what he wanted, and I didn't want to make him feel like I wasn't cooperative. So girl, how you go from being intimidated to he was an authoritative figure to now you all in love and you really willing to involve your friends who what did your friends say when you made this proposition to them? They was just gung-ho, like, okay, yeah, girl, let's go and do this. Like, make it make sense. So anyway, Reshona says she told no one about her relationship with Kelly because he told her as soon as they started having sex to keep it a secret and not to share it with anyone. She said she was 14 at the time. She said she wanted to share it with her friends but didn't. Okay, but you just said, sis, that he told you to invite the friends over, and the friends was all gung-ho and willing to come. Okay, was that before or after? Like, I'm confused. Like, what's going on here? So then he has question. Did Mr. Kelly ever record you two engaged doing the do? Answer, yes. Question, when did that start? Answer, when I was 14. Okay, so what was he recording if y'all didn't start doing the do until... Okay, and is this activity on the videos, or is y'all just throwing stuff out here for no reason? Okay. Anyway, so Reshona now testifying about 3 recordings that would be played for the jury of her and Kelly allegedly having sex at his George Street house in his bedroom and living room. Okay, is this the point where we start asking, where was Drea when all this was going on? Because it seems to me that, let's say, okay, him and Drea got married in what, 95? And then this was going on in what, 96, 97, 98. So 96, Drea was pregnant with Joanne. 98, she was pregnant with the other child whose name I can't never remember. The one that first she said she was a boy, and now she says she a lesbian. And then 2000, that was when the son was born, right? Yeah, I think so. What was Drea going on if all this was taking place at the house? Like, was she not allowed to go into that part of the house where all this foolishness was taking place? like that, well, you know, Sharon did say she was up in the room, wasn't allowed to come outside without permission. So I guess is that why, so maybe that's what Drea supposed to testify, because somebody said Drea supposed to be testifying. So maybe she is testifying to the fact that she was upstairs in the room, wasn't allowed to come out when all this was going on. So anyway. So Reshona now testifying, blah, blah, blah. Let's see. Okay, Reshona says she watched the videos in preparation for her testimony. Did you watch them from beginning to end? Yes. Did you watch them with sound? Yes, softly. Who is depicted in these videos? Robert and myself. The tapes are being admitted now. So Reshona telling jurors the second video in Kelly's living room shows her laying on the floor while Kelly gives her oral. Ooh. He gives her champagne, tells her to refer to her genitalia as 14 years old. Then urinated on my vagina, she says, almost too softly to hear. Once again, Reshona says okay. Anyway, Reshona's voice is getting quieter and starting to break as she describes the third video, which is the one from the 2008 trial that took place in the Colorado room in Kelly's basement. Asked if it was a true depiction of what happened that day, Reshona whispered yes. Reshona is asked why Kelly appears to hand her money at the beginning of the video. She starts to cry audibly and says after a long pause, because if anybody saw the tape or if it was released for some reason, he would say I was a prostitute. Okay. Were y'all role playing? Were you role playing as a prostitute? I'm confused. Okay. So Reshona says when the Chicago Police Department first began investigating her relationship with Kelly in 2000, she denied it because he told her he'd be ruined if it came out. That was something I would take to my grave. Kelly told her she did a good job answering their questions, she said. In early 2002, her aunt Stephanie Sparkle Edwards told her there was a sex tape leaked that was including Robert and I, and that it was going to go public. I was scared, Reshona says. She says Kelly continued to stress how important it was to continue to deny it. In early 2002, Kelly told Reshona's parents that it was true he'd been having sex with their daughter and asked that they keep quiet. Now, to the parents listening to this video, if a grown man came to you and told you that he was having sex with your daughter and had been having sex with your daughter since however many years, for 4-5 years now, and to just keep quiet, how would y'all respond? What would your response be? Because according to Reshona, he was saying, I can't help you. No, let's go back. So in early 2002, Kelly told Sharona's parents that it was true. Okay. She says, I just remember my dad storming out. She says, he was saying, I can't help you. He was hysterical. He might have been hysterical and he might have stormed out, but the average father would have came back with a gun, okay, and it just would have been over and done with at that point. So I have no idea like what these parents was thinking, or maybe this conversation really did take place. However, she was 18 or 19 at that point. Okay, so she was born in 84. So 60, so she would have been 18. So maybe the dad thought, this relationship just happened. That she was 18 years old, and although he was upset about it, he knew wasn't nothing he could do because she was an adult, right? Because I just don't believe that the man walked into that room and told these people that he had been sexing their daughter for the past 6 years or 4 years or however many years it was, and that they just got upset and stormed out the room. That makes absolutely no sense. So Reshona says that Kelly decided to send them to the Bahamas and Cancun so they could not be accessible. Why do I always say Mexico? No, why? Maybe I need to go on a trip to Mexico. So they wouldn't be accessible to police and the media. There was a lot of negative attention happening around the videotape, and Robert wanted us to leave the country to figure out approaches going forward. We are on afternoon break, back in 15 minutes. Sounds like Reshona will be on the stand for the rest of today and a good chunk of Friday. So we are back. Reshona says that while they were on their trip, her parents came to the conclusion they were going to do as I asked and basically stay on Kelly's side. She said they'd lost their jobs and couldn't afford lawyers, and they didn't want to lose her too. So what job had they lost? Was the mama fired as the receptionist? We know the daddy wasn't fired as the drummer because he was working with the man. We know for a fact he was on the Chocolate Factory, CD, right? Is that the one? One came out in 2003, and then the other one came out in 2011. And the dad is credited on both of those because that's what Jennifer Bongine pointed out yesterday. So anyway, Reshona says that while she was in Mexico, okay, Lord Jesus, help me, I'm tired. Cancun is in Mexico. Get it together, Tracy, get it together. Okay. So she got a tattoo with Kelly's name and with a heart. When she got back and showed it to Kelly, he told her it was a problem and had Milton Brown take her to a tattoo artist's house to get it covered up. I wonder if that was Bubba. Is Bubba the one that covered up the tattoo? So anyway, Reshona says that after she was subpoenaed to testify before a Cook County grand jury in April 2002, Kelly again told her stay loyal and deny it was her on the tape. She says Kelly paid for an attorney to go with her to the appearance. Okay, so he didn't send them on the trip to avoid the grand jury testimony as was previously stated by others. he sent them on the trip to avoid talking to the police. Like the police was going to talk to him eventually anyway, right, when they got back in town. So it makes no sense that he sent them on a month long. Did he think that the police was just going to give up and walk away, and that the media was just going to say, oh, well, they on vacation, so we ain't going to talk to them? Okay. So Reshona says she was put under oath before the grand jury. Question, were you truthful? Answer, no. Question, what did you tell them that was not true? Answer, that I was not involved with Kelly sexually and that we had never made any videotapes. Reshona acknowledges that in exchange for her testimony, she has been granted immunity for prosecution for perjury. So Reshona says that she turned over 2 key pieces of evidence to Kelly's lawyers: a silver cross necklace and that was visible on the sex tape, as well as her passport, which had a photo of her wearing the same necklace. The lawyers were Ed Jensen, and I believe there was a Sam, referring to Sam Adam Jr. Okay, once again, what was Ed Jensen going to do with this necklace? Because we already know that the necklace in question was on school pictures, because they had classmates that testified that the person was wearing a necklace just like a necklace she wore. So what was she giving the lawyers the necklace for when it was already able to be verified? And then the passport. The government can pull up your passport. They don't need the passport to look at your passport. They just go into their system and pull up your passport and see your picture on the passport. So like that was, maybe these attorneys wasn't that smart, or maybe she was just dumb. I don't know. So Reshona testifies that she moved to Kelly's mansion. Okay, maybe if she gave them the necklace, then the police couldn't do a search and find the necklace. But still, going back to the passport, the government has your passport picture, so they didn't need the passport. So anyway, Reshona testifies that she moved to Kelly's mansion in Olympia Fields while his case was pending, but after he was acquitted, their relationship changed for the worse. As far as other women being involved, as far as abuse coming into play, Kelly's lawyer objects. Now in a sidebar. So Reshona testifies that Kelly abused her from age 17 to the time she left him at 24. Okay, when did she turn 24? She was born in 84. So 2000, that would make her 16, right? And then 2008. Okay, but I thought she was spotted at the house in 2015. Okay. So anyway, she said it involved being spanked and hitting. She says, she also says he controlled her, would not allow her to work or leave. Girl, why your parents didn't come get you, especially since your daddy was still playing for him? Like, okay, when they went on tour, your mama couldn't come to the house and tell you to come on, let's go. But in 2014, she said Kelly helped her rent her own place in University Park and get a car to go to work. He paid for it in part with a check that said settlement on it. Question, did you have any kind of settlement agreement with Mr. Kelly? Answer, no. So Reshona says she finally started coming clean about her relationship with Kelly to law enforcement a few years ago. Asked why, she paused for several seconds, and then she said with dramatic effect, because I became exhausted with living with his lies. So that's it for Reshona's direct testimony. McDavid's lawyer, Bo Brindley, is starting his cross now. Sounds like Bonjean will cross-examine Reshona on Friday. So now we move over to Michael Tarm. And so he says, hashtag R. Kelly trial has resumed here in the U.S. District Court in Chicago. Let's scroll down. During cross, a retired police detective, a government witness, agreed that one current accuser, Reshona, and her parents denied in the earlier 2000s she was having sex with Kelly. At this trial, she's expected to be the star government witness. It says the detective tells jurors that then Chicago Sun-Times reporter Jim Derogatis anonymously received a video in the early 2000s allegedly showing Kelly having sex with an individual. Derogatis contacted police and they retrieved the tape from the Sun-Times, launching an investigation. A new government witness says he brought Kelly's home in 2001. The witness tells jurors the house was converted into a church, or was a converted church. Was it a church before or after? I'm not sure. Okay, the witness who bought Kelly's home in 2001 told jurors that he discovered that some of the smoke detectors around the house were actually video cameras. Government star witness expected to take the stand. Okay, so now she's on the stand. Let's see, is he saying anything different? Oh, now this is what I thought was funny, because this was different. So he said that Reshona told jurors that she met Kelly when she was 12 or 13 when he came to a gospel concert at a church, saying there were a lot of wows when the superstar walked in. She talked to him backstage. Later, Kelly also attended a concert by a musical group that she was in. And then also, when all this was going on, when was she practicing with the group? When were they traveling all overseas, becoming superstars? Like if she was with Kelly hundreds and hundreds of times, okay? So I asked how many times she had sex between around age 15 in the late 1990s and until she turned 18. She answered quietly, uncountable times, hundreds. So on lunch break at the trial, Reshona will continue her testimony after the break. Let's see. Star government witness federal trial has struggled to keep her composure, testifying for the first time publicly that she was the girl on a VHS video with Kelly. The video was at the heart of Kelly's 2008 trial, at which he was acquitted. When the prosecutor asked Reshona who was on the tape, she answered by referring to Kelly's legal first name, Robert, and myself. When the prosecutor asked how old she was at the time, she said quietly 14. Reshona became emotional, explaining why Kelly can be seen handing money to her in the video. She said it was a precaution against anyone accusing him of abuse if authorities ever obtained the video. If anyone saw the tape, he wanted it to appear as if I was a prostitute. Okay. So Reshona described her parents confronting Kelly at one point about whether he was having sex with their daughter. Kelly dropped to his knees and begged her parents to forgive him, Reshona testified. Reshona says she, her father, and her mother were also crying at the meeting about the tape. She said she later implored her parents not to do anything to get him in trouble, telling them she loved him. Reshona says she continued to care for Kelly, even getting a tattoo with his name on it sometime in 2002. But Kelly told her she had to cover the name with another tattoo. He feared that with an investigation about the video, it would tie her to him when she was still underage. Okay, Reshona was uncomfortable lying to a 2002 grand jury that she wasn't the one in the video, but did it for many reasons, including to protect Kelly. Asked if there was any other reason she was uncomfortable, she said, I also did not want that person to be me. I was ashamed of my behavior. Child, you should have been. You should have been more than ashamed. Reshona testified that the abuse abuse started coming into play with Kelly after the 2008 trial. Asked what the form of the abuse took, she answered, being spanked and hitting. How did it make you feel? Horrible, she said. Reshona didn't try to leave Kelly, with whom she lived in the Chicago suburbs in her early 20s, because sometimes the abuse would come from me trying to leave. But girl, the man was going on tour. You could have left while he was on tour. And since you was leaving, you wasn't coming back. Did you think he was going to come hunt you down and drag you back to the house? Toward the end of the day, Thursday, after being on the stand much of the day, a prosecutor asked Reshona why she decided in recent years to begin speaking honestly about what happened. She answered, I became exhausted living with his lies. On Thursday, Reshona recounted how she first met Kelly, how their relationship grew, and how he allegedly abused her hundreds of times while she was a minor. Reshona told jurors she was in a musical group with her cousins in the mid-1990s and first met Kelly during a gospel concert in her church when she was 12 or 13. I was excited, she said. I knew who he was as an artist. I knew his level of success. I was just excited like every other fan in the room. But every other fan in the room didn't end up in your situation. So what separated you from them, Miss Reshona? So Kelly and Reshona continued seeing each other in the ensuing months in meetups coordinated by the girl's aunt, who was in a relationship with Kelly. Now, child, wasn't Sparkle married at the time? That aunt eventually encouraged her when she was 13 to ask Kelly to be her godfather by sitting on his lap and rubbing his head. Reshona testified that she did, and he agreed. He was just a person I looked up to, she said. I thought it was a good idea at the time. But within weeks, Kelly allegedly began pushing for a relationship. This began with phone sex, Reshona testified, but later expanded into physical sexual abuse when she was a couple of years older. Kelly also allegedly encouraged Reshona to recruit her other underage friends, identified under the pseudonyms Pinky and Brittany, to engage in encounters with him. Asked how many sexual encounters she had with Kelly while she was between 15 and 18, Reshona first said the number was uncountable, but then estimated the total was in the hundreds. Reshona wiped away tears as she described 3 separate video recordings she reviewed before trial, which she said depict her and Kelly engaging in acts inside his former George Street home while Reshona was a minor. So did Mr. Kelly ever record you two engaged in activity? Assistant U.S. Attorney Janice Appington asked her. Yes, she replied. When asked when that began, she said she was 14. Reshona admitted that she later lied to investigators both with the Department of Children and Family Services and the Chicago Police Department about her relationship with Kelly, stating that she was scared of what could happen to her or Kelly if that information went public. Again, it was embedded in me that this could never come out, she testified. She also testified that she lied about her relationship with Kelly while under oath when questioned about it before a Cook County grand jury in 2002, denying that she'd had sex with Kelly or that she was involved in any videos. When asked why, Reshona responded, because I was afraid to expose Robert, because I was afraid of what might happen to my parents. I also did not want that person on the video to be me. I was ashamed. So Reshona admitted she was testifying in the current trial under an immunity deal with the government to avoid being prosecuted with perjury. Federal prosecutors have said Reshona didn't testify at the 2008 trial because Kelly and his associates hid her and her family away from law enforcement. Kelly was ultimately acquitted in that case. Reshona's testimony and the illicit videos in which she allegedly appeared are expected to be parts of the government's case against Kelly in his current trial. Now, child, I thought she didn't testify because the prosecution hedged the bet that it would be best to keep her off the stand than to put her on the stand. So, girl, where was you hidden away at? So Kelly was charged in 2019 on allegations that he abused. Oh, and then also they said she was on the tour bus in the parking lot. I don't know. So Kelly was charged in 2019. 5 separate individuals recorded those acts. Superseding indictment filed the following year added a 6th alleged victim. 2 former employees of the singer are on trial with him. According to prosecutors, Darren McDavid paid an acquaintance hundreds of thousands of dollars beginning in 2001 to collect those videos and cover up their existence, when that acquaintance later planned to hold a news conference to announce he had the videos. Kelly and McDavid and others allegedly paid him approximately $170,000 to cancel the event. Kelly... Okay, wait a minute. Prosecutors further allege Kelly and McDavid paid one of the individuals and another individual to help recover the return of the videos. So they said one of the minors, but we talking about Lisa Van Allen, and she wasn't a minor. So Kelly's attorney, Jennifer Bongine, has called her client's accusers liars and extortionists, and said in her opening statements that Reshona and her parents for years denied that she had any relationship with Kelly. Then they talk about the police officer interviewing Reshona and her parents in the late 2000s following an anonymous allegation. On cross-examination, Everett testified that Reshona, and that anonymous allegation either came from Sparkle or Drea. So on cross-examination, Everett testified that Reshona stated repeatedly that no such relationship existed. She denied it completely. McDavid's attorney, Bo Brindley, asked, "That's correct," Everett responded. Everett said he received the videotape from reporter Jim Derogatis that purportedly showed the activity with Reshona, portions of which he reviewed this week. Brindley questioned whether that video and the one he reviewed this week were actually the same, noting that the original was on a VHS tape while the other video was played on a disc. A second witness testified he bought a Lakeview home. Okay, the guy talking about the fire detector. So once again, the videos are now on disc. Okay, not the original videos that were presented during the 2008 trial. So it'll be interesting to see how they explain this. And then Reshona is expected to continue Friday when the case resumes. And then we go over to this guy, Andy Grime. And Andy Grime says that defense attorneys have said that Lisa Van Allen made off with a tape of her having sex with Kelly and with Reshona, who was 14, and later tried to blackmail the singer with it. Kelly kept videos in a gym bag or in the log cabin jacuzzi room at his Lakeview home. She saw Kelly put tapes in the bag or on shelves in the house after filming. Kelly co-defendant Milton June Brown gets his first mention in the testimony to date when Reshona is asked who else she saw handling the duffel bag that Kelly used to stash his porn tapes. Darren McDavid gets his first mention as Reshona. Reshona describes a 2002 meeting with Kelly and her parents at an Oak Park hotel as rumors swirled about a tape of her and Kelly. McDavid, she said, set up the meeting. The purpose of the meeting was to get Reshona's parents on board. Things were about to go to the next level as far as authorities getting involved. And so I needed to let my parents know that we had a relationship because they were going to find out, Reshona said. Reshona's father and Kelly went into another room, and Kelly admitted that he had sex with Reshona while she was underage. Her father was outraged. I remember Kelly dropping to his knees and grabbing his head and apologizing profusely and just asking for my dad's forgiveness, Reshona said. Kelly sent Reshona and her parents on a trip to the Bahamas and Cancun to get away from the negative attention from authorities and the press. Kelly told Reshona to make her parents uncomfortable so they wouldn't turn on him. It was not a fun vacation, she said. Reshona was in frequent communication with Kelly while in Bahamas and Cancun with her parents. I just let him know that I was following his instructions. In a sense, I was kind of working on them to be in his favor, just begging them, pleading with them. I am heading into the courtroom where electronics are not allowed. So this is the guy saying that he's going in the courtroom now, and that we need to tune in to, I think, John Seidel. I can't remember who he said to look to, but anyway. Then he made a quick correction. He says, I was not in the courtroom before. Reshona was identifying disc with the video that she had viewed and describing the acts on the video. So still, no video has been shown in court and no stills. So what y'all think they waiting on to show them videos? So Reshona explains why Kelly handed her cash at the start of one of the videos. It says, Reshona takes a long pause and seems to choke up. If anybody saw the tape, they would think she was a prostitute, she said. Appington asked Reshona about her encounters with Kelly and Lisa Van Allen, an over 18 girlfriend of Kelly. She, Van Allen, who will testify for the prosecution, and Kelly had threesomes multiple times, including one that was taped in the log cabin room. Defense attorneys have said that Lisa Van Allen made off with a tape of her having sex with Kelly and Reshona, and later, didn't mean to do that. Okay, I clicked on something I shouldn't have clicked on. Okay, later tried to blackmail the singer with it. Kelly kept videos in a gym bag or in the log cabin jacuzzi room at his Lakeview home. She saw Kelly put tapes in the bag or on shelves in the house after filming. Kelly co-defendant Milton June Brown gets his first mention in the testimony to date when Reshona is asked who else she saw handling the duffel bag. And she said that Kelly used to stash, and I guess she identified June Brown. So Daryl McDavid gets his first mention as she describes the 2002 meeting with Kelly at the Oak Park Hotel. The purpose of the meeting was to get the parents on board. Things were about to go to the next level as far as authorities, so that's why they had the meeting. She says, I remember Kelly dropping to his knees and grabbing his head and apologizing profusely and just asking for my dad's forgiveness. Then she claimed that he sent them to the Bahamas and Cancun. Make your parents uncomfortable. She didn't have fun on the vacation. Reshona was in frequent communication with Kelly and her parents. I just let him know that I was following his instructions. In a sense, I was kind of working on them to be in his favor, just begging them and pleading with them. And then, and then he says that he was heading into the courtroom. So I think he tweeted that stuff twice. So anyway, guys, that's a summary of what happened today in court. Okay. Let me know what you think. Are you the type of parents that Reshona had, or did you have parents like my parents that would have kicked me into next year if I was doing some of this stuff that these fools were doing? So anyway, go ahead, leave your comments below, rate the video, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. And until the next time, I shall talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.